This is the PowerShell Podcast, PowerShell and DevOps Global Summit 2025 edition, the bar sessions. Can I buy you a drink? The PowerShell Podcast is a PDQ production, making device management simple, secure, and pretty damn quick. And now, here's your host, Andrew Pla.
Welcome to a PowerShell Summit, the Summit Sessions. A lot of back-to-back episodes here, and no better way to kick it off than with none other than, I've been trying to get you on the pod for a very long time. I'm glad I got to get you on now, but Missy Januszko, welcome to the PowerShell Podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I've known you for quite a long time, and when was your first year at Summit?
I think my first year at Summit was 2017.
Okay.
And I had baptism by fire. I was a co-presenter with Jason Helmick
Wow.
at my first Summit.
That's awesome.
We were talking about DSC and it was a DSC session.
So you've been in the PowerShell community for quite a long time. Have you been every year? Have you missed a couple of years along the way since 2017?
I have not missed any years except for the one that I call the Lost Summit 2020.
Yeah.
If there was one summit that I was like, I love the content for every summit, but that one I was particularly sad about not having the content for it.
So when you say content, are you referring to, because if those who don't know, you actually help put on or select all the content for PowerShell Summit, right?
Correct. Like I have been the content director for Summit since 2019.
Wow. That is quite a while. So I guess whenever you say you're excited for the content, that's because you had a lot of knowledge of the content that was coming because you read the CFPs, proposals.
Yes. Yeah. So in 2019, I started out with Warren Frame.
Yes, I love Warren Frame. PS Cookie Monster.
Yes. He was my co-content director for a couple of years. And then Kevin Marquette came in for a year. And then I think the past 2 years I did it all by my lonesome.
Solo dolo.
Yep.
I imagine that's pretty challenging because there's a lot of submissions to come in, I can guess.
This year was probably the most submissions I have seen since 2019.
Wow.
We had almost 300 submissions.
Holy smokes. And did you have anyone helping with you, or did you have to read each of these? Was there any kind of filtering or?
So after we decided that we weren't going to do a co-content director anymore, we kind of did an evaluation team. And so I had a team of, I'm going to say like 10 people for the past 2 years who will come in for 2 weeks, read the papers. We've been kind of tweaking the evaluation criteria every year just to make it a little bit easier on ourselves. So what we did this year was, I would say, we read through every submission and we started out with like a yes/no. This year we also implemented anonymous mode, so nobody knew who the submitters were. It was just based on what they submitted, and we would rank them yes/no. And then after all the evaluators had gone through all of them, then we cut it down to the top 175. And then we did a second round where it's kind of like a chess ranking. And then from the chess ranking, I pull all that data out and kind of look through it and go, all right. I usually try to fill, I'm going to say like the longer sessions first because there's probably less of them. I like to do something like 90-minute sessions in sets of 4 so that they all fit in the same slot. And then kind of go through and be like, all right, well, this one I've seen, I already picked a 4-hour lab on Entra Graph or Microsoft Graph, so I don't need more Microsoft Graph content unless it's like drastically different. But if it is drastically different from another submission, then I'm going to look at it and say, all right, this one's different enough. It's a crazy process.
It sounds like a lot, and I think we all benefit from it. So thank you so much for your efforts over the years. I mean, it's kind of hard to quantify that many years. I can't remember that far back. to be honest.
I think it wasn't 2019 your first year.
2018. Yep.
Okay.
2018.
So 2018, that was another speaker year, and that's when they kidnapped us and said, "Will you be our content director?"
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of people who are pretty fired up about contributing to the community, and maybe they want to speak at Summit one year or speak at any conference, really. And there's this thing with speakers where they put out, I guess, a CFP, a call for papers or proposals, and that is the initiation of the ability to submit your submissions, submit your talks. And I'm curious, what makes a talk good? When you get a proposal, what are some of the key things people should be looking out for?
Well, I would say, first of all, we're looking for original content. So if it's something that has been submitted before, if it's something that like is a part two to a submission that you previously spoke about, those things will be noted in the evaluation, like, oh, I've seen this before, it's a part two. That doesn't mean you're not going to get in, but might mean that you're ranked a little lower than something that's super original and is creative. And like, I'll give you an example. Josh Korick, I'm going to name drop here.
I love Josh Korick.
So in my Lost Summit in 2020, submitted a Python for the PowerShell admin. And I have been begging him to bring that back ever since, because it's original and it's something that people haven't seen, and it's skills that you can take back immediately and use.
Yeah, I love the easy wins you can have in PowerShell, and being able to give those to others. It's like, oh, you haven't heard of PS Readline? Well, I mean, there's a lot there that you can have just a quick little keystroke and get a bunch of value out of it. So,
right.
What about dealing with the fear of submitting a talk? Like, I know you've been a speaker, you've been on this side of things, you've seen the new speakers go and the nerves, and what kind of guidance or advice can you give to people who are dealing with imposter syndrome, dealing with doubting themselves, and still trying to proceed with speaking?
I don't know if I can give any good advice there.
I asked a really easy question.
I'm not going to lie here. One of the reasons I enjoy being content director is because I don't have to come up with original submissions.
Right.
So I love reading the submissions and seeing what other people come up with. And I'd be like, man, I wish I came up with that idea.
Right.
But I'm not, I don't feel like I'm an idea person, but I can take those ideas and get you a platform.
If a proposal has some indicators of AI generation, is that a yay or a nay?
This year it was a nay. If we thought it was AI generated, ChatGPT generated, not original work, not a lot of thought put into it, we were trying to reject those. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I know AI is a popular thing and people are going to want to use it, and there are super good uses for it, but we want to, I feel like we wanted to see original work this year.
That is fair. One thing that's cool about community in general, and the PowerShell community in particular, is passing the torch, right? People can only do the same thing for so long before needing to grow and empower another to take that same position and contribute an opportunity. And I think that you're going to be moving on from the content director role next year. Is that right? I
am. This is going to be my last year as content director. I did feel like, I don't know. I felt like I was getting a little stale. Every year we meet and we talk about how we can make things a little different, a little bit better. And I feel like I had some evaluators around me with fresh perspectives and great ideas that I just didn't have the time to implement. And honestly, like, I probably would have had more time to implement it if I had had help. So I reached out to two of my evaluators and said, hey, are you guys interested in being co-content directors? I do feel like there is enough work for two people, but it's not so much work that you're overwhelmed if there's two people. And they have been jumping all over it.
And who is that? Matthew Gill
and Greg Onstadt.
It's been cool to see, Greg's been around for quite a while. He's always been a friendly face, but to see Matthew Gill over the past few years kind of shine, it's been cool. 3D printer extraordinaire. I've been kind of mind blown at some of the stuff he printed.
Yes, we actually all got like personalized speaker 3D printouts of our
headshots.
mugshots.
Yeah, mugshots.
Mugshots.
Oh yeah, those were so awesome. Honestly,
Yeah.
I didn't realize they were 3D printed until you get up close and you can see there's like layers to the printing. It's like, whoa, there's depth to that. That's wild.
Yeah, they're amazing.
I've never seen 3D printing like that. But let's take this full circle a little bit. I've been asking people a lot, like, when you were a beginner in PowerShell, I know it's been quite a while now, right? 2017 was your first summit.
I was probably not a beginner even back in 2017. So my journey probably started, I'm going to say, I don't know, it was PowerShell 2. Like, I remember having a conversation with one of my coworkers about a project that we were working on at work at the time, rolling out Windows 2012, and how we wanted to push the use of PowerShell 3. So it's been quite some time, actually.
Gosh. What is one of your favorite things about being the content director? Like, historically, looking back, when you look on this memory and all these contributions and all this effort you put in, what is one sort of thing you take away with you?
All right. So one thing that I really enjoy is being here. And I don't know, when I get here, I've done so much work that I'm just like, oh, thank God I'm here. And then when I get here, I've joked every year that that this is my last year. And every year James says, yeah, right. This year I said, no, I've actually made the decision that this is going to be my last year. I want to, I'm like, I've got Don Jones and Jeffrey Snover and Jeff Hicks all coming back for probably the last time. I want to go out with a bang. This is going to be it. But every time I leave here, I'm like, oh no, I'm not leaving this. This is great.
There's a magic to it. Yeah.
There was something about last year when I think it was a co-presenter of yours.
Yeah. Kevin.
So you came up through on-ramp.
Yeah.
And you went from an on-ramp student to an every year attendee, and now PowerShell podcaster.
Yeah.
And I've seen your career grow. And, Kevin said to me at the end of last year, he's like, I want to come back and I want to be a speaker. And just watching people whose lives are transformed by this event, that's the most exciting thing to me.
1,000,000%. And I'm definitely benefited from that greatly. Technically in 2018, there wasn't on-ramp yet. So it was full deep end. But fortunately, I had a lot of good mentorship going into it. The community was so kind to me that I felt somewhat ready. And I got excited to really get ready whenever I got the opportunity. But I'll say that since day one, you've always been so kind to me. And I thank you so much for not only that, but also what you've done in the community and being a part of the journey of mine and so many others. And it's the coolest thing is 20 years from now, the trickle down effect of community contributions like that is still going to be there. There's going to be some good feelings you can get when you think back and you look, like you're saying to the next generation kind of doing their thing. And thank you. Really, I just want to
say also, congratulations on your community award.
Thank you. Yeah.
Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
I teased it. I talked about it in the Stephen Jett interview, but yeah, okay. I mean, the Sean Kearney Award, the Community Spirit Award. It's I've always been community driven, not because I'm some good person or Andrew's particularly kind. Yeah, maybe I'm a little bit nice. A lot of people are, but it's because I see the benefits of doing things that way, right? If you do things in a way that helps others and you teach people, you learn an insane amount. I've been so fortunate to be able to play a role in the lives of others a little bit, but I've also benefited greatly myself, getting to chat with people, getting to learn new perspectives. When anyone out there in the world puts themselves forward and tries to do good, others will see that. And I've seen that a lot in other people this year. I see new folks. Lucas Allman comes to mind that, oh my goodness, I cannot wait to see what they get up to. I mean, a little bit of support like what he's going to get at the community here and a couple connections here and there, a little bit of empowerment, a little bit of validation of his experience. And I mean, we'll see what happens next year, but I'm looking forward to journeys like that. And gosh, it's just, I say it so often, but it's cool. The PowerShell, the code, the zeros, the ones, the efficiency, making our lives, our work lives better. But it is so much more than that. And it takes time to wrap your head around that. Honestly, you have to see it and feel it. And even still, it takes time. And
so I actually have a Sean Kearney story.
Really?
In 2016, yeah. Which was when I first met people like Jason Helmick and Don Jones and things like that. We had a Philly PowerShell user group. It was called Philly Posh. And I started attending the sessions, and I will say that I was a little overwhelmed. And I think the first one, Sean was our guest speaker, and he did like a remote session for us. So that was particularly momentous moment for me. I was still lost. I'm not going to lie. I don't remember what the topic was about, but I do remember him being the first speaker of the first Philly Posh event that I ever attended.
Wow. Yeah. An amazing soul. Did so much good, impacted so many people's lives. And yeah, it's been a special week for me. Definitely perspective changing. I have a renewed hunger, a new perspective. And I can't wait to see what the rest of the year holds.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Missy, for joining me. I finally got you on the pod.
Thanks for having me. I know I've been a little maybe resistant to it, but this has been fun.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you, everyone out there. Another Summit Sessions. I'm joined with Leslie Brendible on the leadership team. We got to meet last year. You were on On-Ramp. Now you're helping run the whole thing. How's it going?
It's been really great. I will say that I am standing in for John this year, and that's how I've introduced myself to people. Everyone's sad that John's not here. Honestly, same.
John's amazing.
John's an amazing person, and honestly, like, he's the one that helped me get an on-ramp last year and have that incredible opportunity. And this year, when he and James had reached out to me saying, hey, are you still interested in volunteering? Do you want to be a part of, like making the conference happen, really? John mentioned he had some things come up last minute, and it was finally an opportunity for me to help John. And I'm not going to lie, I was kind of nervous at first. I was like, John's a very important person, and he does a lot of amazing work for a lot of amazing people. I have big shoes to fill. I have a vest to fill. And at first I was like, if there's someone that's more passionate and really wants to do this more than me, by all means, give it to them. And after I told John that, James reached out to me, and I was like, okay, they really want me.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll do it. But yeah, they both reached out to me, and I was like, you know what? Like, that says volumes. I'm like, I felt honored that they wanted me on the team and that they trusted me with this amazing conference. And I was like, yeah, why not? Like, I love experiences. I love doing new things. Why not help my friends out?
Totally. That's awesome. And I think you've done a fantastic job. We're towards the end of the conference, and I've heard nothing but glowing reviews. So
thank you.
Thanks for all your work. Because I see you running around. I was going to ask, it seems to me like, and I don't know if you've ever worked in a hospital, but it seems to me like what it would be like to be on like the operating room floor. You got like one thing popping off here, and like, oh my gosh, you got to go here, and there's an issue in 404 or whatever. Mm-hmm. Does it feel like that?
I actually have a background in event planning and like stage management and stuff.
Awesome.
So before I got my tech degree, and I know we'll talk more about this later, I used to like work events, and I've worked many, and I've like stage managed theatrical productions and stuff like that. And I'm used to like the organized chaos, and I'm used to like helping systems come together and work cohesively.
Yeah.
And you just kind of adapt as you go. Like for me, everyone's like, how do you do it? And I'm like, we just go from one thing to another. If I have like the game plan down, I know what I'm doing. And a lot of it is just kind of like trying your best to keep a calm composure and just move from one thing to the next and like come up with solutions on the spot. And if I don't have them, I just reach out to other people and ask for help. Like, hey, how can we make this happen? Who can I contact?
Yeah.
Yeah. And comfortable shoes go a long way with this kind of stuff.
And that's the type of thing that's valuable outside of just events management. Like, that is a valuable skill to have. So that's cool. We're taking advantage of that and getting the benefit from your perspective.
Definitely. Thank you.
I think it's really cool, like with anything, like with a work team or whatever, when you bring in someone with a fresh perspective, teams are often super stoked for that.
Yeah.
Even if you're not the most senior person, but you have those fresh eyes where you can call out like, wait,
Yeah.
this could be easier if we made documentation for how to do this process. So
Yeah.
it's always cool to see that.
It really is.
This conference has been really perspective changing for me in terms of like what I need to do to help the community the most and what the community needs the most ultimately.
Yeah.
So it's been, gosh, so much fun to the community during the day, checking out conferences, geeking out, learning things, but then at nighttime for me, connecting with others, sharing experiences. You don't often get to have that, like in a work situation,
Yeah.
we're kind of, it's not the same relationship with the coworkers, and I've just had such a great time getting to know you and so many others in these kind of post-hour or hallway session type things.
Yeah. I feel like that's the really beautiful thing about conferences. Like, I feel like this year especially, like, I've had more conversations of getting to know people's, like, backgrounds and stories and really, like, actually getting to know the PowerShell community. And it's been really beautiful because it's, like, I get to see who's in this community and, like, what they look forward to in this and how we can make it happen and how we can ultimately just, like, come together and just enjoy each other's space, And I feel like that's what conferences should really be about. Like, it's fun to geek out and get technical, but I feel like at the end of the day, it's really amazing that we get to be there for each other.
1,000,000%. I feel like there's such a huge intrinsic desire with humans to connect with others, and there's not that many opportunities to do that. And conferences, and there's so many people working remote and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Conferences are such an amazing way to have that. When you have that combined with safety of having people be able to share and feel comfortable, and there's a vibe of openness to a certain degree. There's always room for improvement, but it really enables you to have deeper connections than you could just watching slides in a demo.
Yeah, for real. Because I feel like especially in like online spaces or technical spaces, I feel like there's just a different type of isolation that exists there. And I think it's really cool when we can find these commonalities and really come together about it and like talk about it and also just like get to know the person behind the screen. Yeah.
1,000,000%. That's my favorite thing about the podcast is like, the tech is the entry point, but I want to get to know you and your story, the human stuff, the things that
make you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I love, because you can learn so much.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have the same trajectory or couldn't see yourself in the same shoes, learning from the challenges people faced and overcame and some other people faced and are still dealing with. And, there's opportunities for so much learning there. Same thing as like you can learn from somebody implemented this module and they run into these hurdles here and there.
Yeah.
There's so many other opportunities in life and career where that same teaching kind of thing can work out really well.
Mm-hmm.
Community.
Yeah.
What is community to you? Like, what does it mean?
That is a very big
I'm
question.
asking definitions.
Yeah. I'm like, let me pull my phone and my dictionary. I feel like community is like, I've always told people, I feel like what it boils down to is like showing up for each other and being there and like holding space for like the good, the bad, and the weird, and just like meeting people where they're at, really. And just getting to know like someone to the core and like I keep mentioning sharing space, like that's so huge. And I feel like that's just kind of what community is. Like you show up for each other and you get to know each other and meet them where they're at and just kind of take it from there and figure out how we can support each other.
Agreed. And it's oftentimes the things that are between the lines that are the most helpful. Like you watch someone code, you see how they approach like creating a new line and using the keyboard shortcuts and all this other thing.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of being able to observe the way people handle themselves and learning from people who are some emotionally intelligent, some are great at communicating technically. And I can say that personally, I've learned a lot about how to be a better human from you. From the way you conduct yourself, the way you share feedback, the way you listen. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. That means a lot. I'm like, there's just like so much power in representation and just kind of like modeling behavior that you hope to see in the world. And like, we've talked a lot about, we've had so many amazing conversations this conference, but like, just like how powerful like kindness is and like paying that forward and also just modeling how you would love to see the world and like the perspective you bring. And I think
a few people I've talked to are like, a lot of what I do is to help out who I was. That's
Yeah.
a huge part for me. And I think it's a great approach because you're going to learn by teaching. You're going to create something that would be valuable. There's going to be other people that share that perspective. And I've seen we all have something to share in one way or the other. Some people are going to be silly enough to get behind a podcast and do public stuff like me, and other people are going to be more behind the scenes, empowering others, and it takes all of it.
It really does. There are just like so many parts that go into building a community, and also like let alone being on the leadership team and like identifying like the strengths we bring and how we can like uplift others if like someone's feeling 80% and you're bringing in the 20, or if other people can help uplift you in the moment. Like that's the power of community, is like we step in and take care of each other.
1,000,000%.
Yeah.
Well, Leslie, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
On the Summit sessions. And we'll have to talk in the future.
Oh, we definitely will. I can't wait for that.
And your name is Leslie Brendible. Can people find you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so I'm just on LinkedIn as Leslie Brendible.
Yep. Spell it how you sound it.
Oh, okay. L-E-S?
No, I'm telling them, like, it's not confusing. B-R-E-N-D-I-B-L-E.
Yeah,
Brendible. Yep.
perfect.
And I'll have a link in the show notes.
Thank you. Yeah. But thank you for having me. I can't wait for like a future podcast and for many more amazing conversations.
The door's always open.
Yeah.
One final question. I'm going to put the tables onto you. Do you have a question for me? Could be silly, could be serious, could be whatever.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, this is after we already did an outro, so we cut it if it doesn't go well. So no
okay,
pressure.
Perfect. I'm like, give me a few seconds. Tell me, what has been your favorite food and or activity so far during the conference?
Ooh. Favorite food and or activity?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Favorite food was like probably the tortillas that we had yesterday.
Oh, that was amazing.
Yes.
Yep. How'd you build it? How'd you build your lunch?
I actually just went meat and beans and rice.
Interesting.
And I rocked it.
Yeah.
At conferences, I like to keep it a lot of protein, a lot of veggies.
Yep.
And then some carbs in there too. But yeah, it was amazing. I've enjoyed it the whole week. Today I was kind of like locked in, very heavily caffeinated.
You started the day with a talk at 9 a.m. Yeah.
9 a.m., heavily caffeinated,
busy,
energy drink going into it. Your boy was sweating, standing still. I have a fan. Don't get me started on the fan.
Coming clutch this
I
year.
love the fan. I'm standing there with like people in the audience waiting, holding the fan up to my armpit. Literally,
all been
I'm
there.
shameless. I don't care. They see this like black thing that looks like a walkie-talkie. What's he doing?
It's on the
I
armpit.
don't care.
Yeah.
I ordered. Okay, let's shout out Chalky Milk. Tonight at dinner, I went out, okay? And I'm just saying, be who you are, embrace yourself, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And tonight, I wanted a Chalky Milk. I wanted
love that for
Chalky
you.
Milk with dinner.
Yeah.
Okay, we're out with some
adults
friends.
ordering
We're in a
Chalky
nice
Milk.
restaurant.
Yeah.
I asked, like, do you have chocolate milk? To like, he looks at me, he's like, yeah. It was a nicer restaurant, so I guess they have everything.
Yeah.
And glorious. So
That's awesome. So your highlight is the beans, rice, tortillas, meat, and chalky milk.
Chalky Milk.
Love
Honestly,
that.
and I love fruit in the morning.
Same.
So I did love the fruit. Every
Yeah.
single morning I started me off with some fruit.
That's awesome.
But yeah, thank you, Leslie.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Another PowerShell Podcast Summit Sessions. Microsoft MVP, PowerShell Extraordinaire, Hailey Phillips. Welcome to Summit Sessions. Let's circle back a little bit. Honestly, we've been chatting for a while. Soft skills, super important. You were sharing a little bit about your background with it and kind of earlier on in your career working on those skills, and sort of what's that been like for you?
Yeah, thanks. I would say that it's been kind of bizarre because I always felt that it was a negative in the way that I had spent so much time trying to understand what the actual problem was. And it was always weird to me talking to men where they're like, oh, well, I made this like 1,000-line PowerShell script. And I'm like, why didn't you just get up and walk over to them and ask them what they were trying to do? And they're just like, well, why would I do that? And I'm like, well, if you ask them what they're trying to do and then they tell you, you listen to them. And then when you give them an output and you ask them if it's working for them, they feel like you actually care. And then you have this really fast feedback loop and you could almost give them something that's like super valuable. And why would you spend all that time writing 1,000 lines of code when you could, I don't know, like move the business forward? And so that just never...
Save yourself from suffering.
Yeah, exactly.
It kinda sucks to just like be like, oh, I can't communicate. They're like all the enemy. When you can collaborate, you can also feel good when you help them out because like you don't view them as the enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think also for me, I think about that perspective of like, oh, all this code, this and that. Like, I like to appeal to the efficiency side of things. It's like awesome, but like we want to make our work easier so we can free ourselves up to have more time to actually tackle these bigger projects. And learning how to communicate those. I think Jeffrey Snover talks about it on day one of like the kind of trifecta of like earlier in your career, you need technical skills to get in the door. But as you move to more leadership type roles, you need the soft skills. That is how you actually drive change and become a force multiplier for others.
Yeah, absolutely. When he was talking about that, like that was a big, like me looking in the mirror moment where I was like, oh crap. The thing that I've been preaching about of like making sure you're keeping the door open for others and making it be a better experience than what you walked into. I need to check myself and make sure that I'm not doing that because I have a chip on my shoulder because I felt like that door wasn't open for me. And it's like, how do you be more efficient? All ships rise together. And so how are you actually influencing that? Like, how are you being the change you want to see in the world? And yeah, that was a really good talk. And I took a lot of notes and I'm going to have to revisit those regularly.
For sure. Yeah, I dove into some of that. I did an interview with Jeffrey and Don afterwards and dove into some of that. And yeah, that talk and just his ability to deliver the messaging is so good. I have a lot to reflect on as well after that. Are you a manager currently?
No, I'm not, but I work with a lot of men. So, you know, same.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
I mean, I can say I work with a lot of women now, and I haven't had that experience, and I've learned a ton. And I can say that the communication is really good. I really enjoy it personally. I had 2 sisters, so I have some background there. I guess background as a kid, but...
Yeah, no. So you mean you like started with some emotional intelligence? We love to see it.
I mean, honestly, not really. Like, I really came into my career and very insecure, very like, oh, I need to fit in. I can't ask questions in meetings because I'm feeling like an idiot, but I'm putting forth like, I know what I'm doing. Oh, yeah, the registry, I know all about that. I've totally messed with it all the time. In PowerShell, yeah, no, I could totally do that. And then eventually, you know, I built up enough real confidence based on some data and had some wins enough to be like, okay, yeah, that is an absolutely wrong approach in so many ways. You know, you want to do good work. You want to eventually take ownership of your career and be able to feel proud about what you're doing. And you think about some people you work with are going to leave jobs. You want to have good relationships with them. And so eventually I kind of pivoted towards empowering others. And to be honest, there was a period where I started doing a little bit of public stuff and it was like a little very vulnerable. And I was like, okay, I can't sustain this. So I kind of took a pause for a couple of years. I got to the point in my career where I could afford therapy. That was a whole building block because I needed to go for a long time consistently, not just here and there. You have to develop a trusting relationship, and that takes time. But like I had to invest in those skills a lot. So I know what it's like to have not those, and I know what it's like to have some of those now and to be on that journey. And to, you know, when I look at others, I think there's just a lot of room for growth because I see how much I still have. And I think you mentioned it earlier before we started recording, was just like modeling behavior for others.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're not going to tell them, hey, you're doing X, Y, and Z wrong. They're going to see it. Hopefully the tide lifts a little bit and it becomes easier to do the right thing. And you aren't kind of shown the wrong thing for so long and have to unlearn so much. It's a complex kind of problem. And it's unfortunate that we all have to kind of deal with it. But it's cool to hear that you've made a lot of progress in terms of like navigating. And Jeffrey Snover talked about how like you don't have to be a manager. Like some of the best things are being an amazing team player. Is that how you kind of classify yourself, or was that, do you resonate with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have a business management degree. Like I had no experience in IT at all, like except for the fact that, you know, when I was in high school, I thought guys would think it's really cool that I could like code their entire MySpace. And like, I was like, oh, look at me. I could be like funny. And like, oh, I know this stuff. Yeah, they don't like that. So anyway, so I pivoted to that, but I do think of myself as like an IC in the like, okay, how do I see all of the skills that all of us have? And like, I definitely know my deficits and trying to tap into the thing that someone on your team is really, really good at. And also making sure that we all are rounding ourselves and that we're all kind of iron sharpens iron kind of idea.
Yeah.
And so like, there's a few people that I work with that are just so incredible in so many ways, but also bringing up of like, hey, so this is something that I'm working on, and trying to kind of lead with vulnerability of like, I have a tendency of kind of getting a little too stuck on a task and a little too like, I have to finish this so that people can depend on me. Where instead, what if I more regularly checked in with people who were waiting on the thing that I was providing to them? What if I shortened that feedback loop and ask them, hey, can you try this out and let me know if this actually works for you? Because that builds so much more trust, because it demonstrates that accountability, that you are actively thinking about what it is that they want, and that you're not just trying to be like, look how cool I am because I can do this cool tech thing. Because really, people want to be listened to and know that you're trying to make their job easier. And they don't really care how the sausage is made. That's your job to figure it out. And that's how you make sure that you always have a job. And so the thing that you really is irreplaceable is you being a person, you connecting with them on a human level, and like, hey, we both hate SharePoint. All of us hate SharePoint. It's a necessary evil. And like being able to talk to someone as a human of, hey, I want to make sure that it's easy for you to share whatever information it is. This is why we're going to have to go through this process. What about it is hard for you? Like focusing on those process pieces, that's where real efficiency happens. Not the fact that like, you know, you figured out how to use generic lists over array lists.
I totally agree with you there. You said something earlier that kind of made me think about, you know, as you develop in your career, you've had a lot of successes along the way, a lot of wins. Recently got awarded a Microsoft MVP. Congratulations. You know, that's kind of a career hallmark for many. So, but you have that respect. So you can use that to drive change. And are you seeing that? Because, I mean, I imagine your career's kind of gone up and now you have some of that clout, so to speak.
Yeah, it's funny how like the imposter syndrome, like Jeffrey Snover, like brought it up, like it has only gotten worse, because now I'm like, yes, it has been great in the fact that I kind of feel like, oh, wow, I have something to point to. Hey, I did all of these things. But there's kind of almost this additional pressure where I don't want anyone to feel as though I'm resting on that. Like the whole point of this is I was going to be doing this work regardless. I want to make it better for the person who's behind me. I didn't understand this thing, so I'm writing it not only to myself, but my past self and the person behind me. And so that's the piece. And then also you said something about therapy, and like, I feel so incredibly passionate about this. I think so many people think that therapy is just like somebody nodding along to what you're saying. No, imagine going to a physical therapist. It is somebody who is having you do the work, the actual mind exercise of, okay, hey, you had this bias. Where does that come from? What if we tried not to do that? What if we actually did the exact opposite? If you think that no one is for you, what would you do if people actually agreed to you? How would you show up differently? How about we try that out? And changing communication patterns. And I think that's the piece that people are missing with therapy, is they're like, you're just supposed to have somebody who agrees with you. Why would I pay somebody money to agree with me?
Right.
Like that's such a waste of time.
At work.
Yeah.
People kind of shouting great things at us.
Yeah, exactly. And so anyway, sorry, that's like my shameless plug for therapy, because if anybody wants to get further in their career, please go to therapy. Like that is like the number one thing that I did.
I've said it before on the podcast that the best money I've ever invested in my career to get more money was investing in that, taking care of myself, understanding where my inadequacies are, getting a fresh perspective, someone who's totally not connected to my life outside of this. There is that great line where there's no bias because they know me or they knew it. They're worried about hurting my... No. Yeah, it's so impactful, and it's definitely worth highlighting. And I've realized this year that sort of I've dealt with my imposter syndrome to enough of the degree where I feel safe enough to really start emphasizing that stuff, being a little bit more vulnerable. And it's just because I've been doing it long enough to feel safe. And a lot of times as we go through our careers, it takes time to adjust to new levels of vulnerability or new responsibilities or life changes or whatever it is. And it's easy to compare ourselves to others, especially, you know, the circle we're in keeps getting higher, but it's really important to just compare yourself to the past you. And you mentioned something that I like to harp on a lot too, is people be like, oh, you're nice, community stuff, this and that. You said you're trying to essentially capitalize on your efforts. You're going to be doing this stuff anyways. You've learned the lessons the hard way. You've blood, sweat, and tears kind of thing. You want that to just be lost, those efforts to be gone. It's just like with PowerShell type stuff, right? You want to save that script, pass it on. It's just the appropriate way to go about it. It doesn't have to do with, I'm curious if this resonates with you. It doesn't have to do with you being like an inherently great person who's just totally selfless doing it for others. It's self-serving and others. And it's I call it directionally correct. It's right in every single way. And that's how you know it's the correct approach.
Oh, 1,000%. Because not only is it like, I'm going to keep these, like, is there a level of embarrassment? And do I have a couple of GitHub repos that I'm probably going to keep private forever and I'm like eternally embarrassed? Absolutely. But also it's that point of, I remember seeing people in the community who are architects and thinking I could never get to their level ever. And it's like, nobody ever has to put in the level of effort that I have put in. That was a personal choice that I made that nobody forced me to do. But at the same time, the whole reason that I'm being honest about this is I want to create more space for more creativity for more people. And so the more that I can point out, like, hey, here is 57 wrong ways to do it. And I know those 57 wrong ways. And I would love to spare you that. So that way you can just jump in and start at a way cooler place. Why wouldn't I? Like, everybody remembers the one right way you did it, but nobody was there when you were like, you know, crying because the graph module doesn't work for the 47th time and conflicts with the DLL file with like az.accounts. Like, I don't know this personally, obviously, but just if that happened.
If it did.
Yeah,
maybe.
Wild.
And I'd say, just keep in mind, if you're making the world around you better, whether that's your work, your family, your community, if you're in PowerShell, whatever it is, when you make that world around you better, your world that you live in is better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There was like I'm grateful that I was already on this path before any of this happened. But I was really fortunate to have a lot of people in my life who really believed in me. And one of these people I had the privilege of working with, he was one of our architects, and he just invested so much energy into me and other folks. And he started our Toastmasters chapter, and he very suddenly passed away. And the best part is that all of us knew what a wonderful person he is, and that like he just exuded excellence. And it wasn't in the sense that everything that he did was perfect. It was in the fact that he was so respectful of other people. He owned his mistakes. And it's not about being perfect. It's about demonstrating that, oh man, I messed up here. And like demonstrating the behavior that you would like other people to do. And it sucks. It sucks having to be like, oh, I was a little short there. And wow, I was insecure. And I responded out of like that energy. And maybe somebody wasn't coming to me in energy of lack, and they were actually genuinely asking me a question. But because I was insecure, I didn't hear that from them. Like, how cool would it be to be able to not be so insecure that you could actually just talk about the problem? And then that allows that person to open up about all these other things. And we could actually move technology, people, our world so much further, faster.
Yeah. Modeling behavior is huge. Huge, 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 huge. I think so many of us come into the professional life not having seen a lot of great model behavior. Schools aren't necessarily designed for like same kind of vibe that, I love my coworkers, and it's so cool to be able to work with like other smart people who are, kind and empathetic and things like that. But to me, what you spoke to about being able to model that behavior and sort of uplift others, to me, that's what being a really strong person is, or what we should strive to be, what we consider a strong person. Someone who can take care of themselves, and while still doing that, find the opportunities to uplift others, find the chances to be kind, and make it sort of part of that general process of you in life. And if you do that, just so many great things come from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will say, like, and you made a comment about it being self-serving, like, there was a junior guy on my team, and he is so incredibly talented, and I'm so excited to see where he goes. And he really just needed some guidance. And I was like, thankfully, just knew enough of what I needed when I was in his shoes. And so he started working on things, and I just kind of really tried to focus on like, hey, this is what we're doing. Do you think that we're getting there? What's your vision with this? And just kind of checking in with him. And it's been so incredible how much more work we've gotten done just by me letting go of the reins a little bit, which I never thought, like, even 10 years ago that I would have any sort of controlling tendencies. But like, there is a level of frustration when you're like, man, I was the only one who cared about this. And it's also like, what if you just let that down? And you're not getting paid enough to carry all of this. And also, how is anyone going to see that this work is getting done if you just keep hiding it? And it's so easy to think that we're not hiding it because we're just like, oh, well, this needs to get done, and I'm the only one who can do it. Well, if you're the only one who can do it, why are you doing it to begin with? Because if you are the only one who could do it, wouldn't you need to be paid like top dollar consulting fees?
Right.
So if you really believe that, go out there and be a consultant at that level. Like, if we're going to follow this logically, and that's going back, this is what therapy is. These are the conversations I have with my therapist. She's like, okay, so if we're going to logically follow that, if you really think those things, if you really want the imposter syndrome to win, don't you think you would behave in all of these ways? And so that's the benefit, I think, of community is like you have all of those folks around you who can kind of point out some of these behaviors that you're potentially going to that are kind of against the progress we're all trying to get to.
I completely agree. I think you're highlighting the importance of mentorship. And I think that one thing I've seen is, work isn't that place where you get all those life skills. There can be some. Modeling behavior is a great way to rising tide, iron sharpens iron kind of thing. But it isn't where you're going to be able to address these core issues. If it becomes a problem, it's just not appropriate for that to be at work. You have to find that. And that's where community plays into things. I think getting an extra perspective of someone like a mentor or that type of relationship is so critical. And I love things that are true everywhere. Like different perspective approaching that, different perspective on approaching any problem is actually the truth. So whether that's your teams, whether that's whatever it is, the more different backgrounds you can have on your team, the better, the more angles you can approach a problem from.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and even just from a selfish perspective, wouldn't it make sense that we would want to tap into every single market that exists? So wouldn't it make sense that we would want to have every single person from every different diverse walk of life here so we can make sure that we're making as much money as possible? Like if we really wanted to play that game, wouldn't that make the most sense?
Yeah, and I do see some orgs starting to understand that. You and I have come to that conclusion. There's many others that I talk to that have as well. I like to try and pay attention of what the general global emotional intelligence is based on my very anecdotal observations. And I do see some growth there. And it's cool to have conversations with you that are being part of that growth. But it can't just be one thing. It needs to be, if you're resonating with what we're saying, find your chance to take your next step. If you need to work on yourself, you're feeling insecure, you're feeling like you can't ask questions because you're going to be called, find a way to address that. Get into therapy, find some mentorship, reach out. I find so many people who don't have any form of a support system. It's a real challenge to get that. It's hard to stumble upon that and balance a full-time job. But it is so important. And I think a great way to get started is whatever thing you do, find the community for that. Take the chances, do it slow, take small risks. If you need to be safe, if you're concerned, do it one step at a time. And that one step at a time thing is how you get to be a Hailey Phillips, where you got these wins. And a lot of people we talk to, they're not miracle workers. The thing I talk about on the pod is coming into this, I thought they're built different. They're wizards. They're doing stuff I could never do. And then interviewing so many of them, getting to know them, sort of having my own journey with growth. I see that it's absolutely not true at all. There's maybe a few people who are okay, you're exceptional at programming in a way that would, most people, if they dedicated a 30-year career, it would be tough. But that is not, that's almost nobody. That's not the people you're probably thinking of wanting to emulate.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely nobody special. And I don't mean that to minimize any of the things that I've done, but there's nothing exceptional about me. And it's really the compounding interest piece is find the thing that you have natural affinity towards, spend time at that, and then also look at the things that you don't have natural affinity towards and spend, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5%, whatever it is, and show up consistently daily in those things so that you can start leveling everything together. And so that you're naturally going to be excited about some things, and that is awesome. And everybody's going to align with that, but it's trying to be as well-rounded as possible because one thing that I think is so cool about this conference specifically is recognizing that DevOps has nothing to do. Yes, PowerShell is so fun and so cool. And that's why we're all here. But DevOps is what's keeping us here. And that's the point is that we're continuously improving and we're continuously reevaluating and that never stops. And so we all have to be willing to continuously reevaluate. And that is a personal thing that we all have to be willing to show up doing.
Fantastic, Hailey. I mean, great getting to chat with you. I know we chatted a little bit, but I feel like I got to know you quite a bit. That was awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We'll have to chat in the future again.
Yes.
Thanks for listening to the PowerShell Podcast. The PowerShell Podcast is a PDQ production, making device management simple, secure, and pretty damn quick.